Good evening, everyone. This is the November 24th meeting of the Planning and Development Board in the City of Ithaca. We call the meeting to order at 6:04 p.m. Welcome to everyone who's here in person and to our board. Can I ask you to go around and introduce yourselves, please?
Andy Roman, member of the board.
Jenny Sutcliffe, member of the board.
Max Pfeffer, board member.
Elizabeth Godden, member of the board and vice chair.
Peggy Tully, member of the board.
Nikki Sarah, environmental and landscape planner and staff to the board.
Emily Petrino, chair of the board.
Lisa Nicholas, Director of Planning and Development and staff to the board.
And you might notice we have a new member. So if I can circle back to you, Peggy, just give us a brief background and welcome.
Hi, yeah, I'm Peggy Tully. I am a resident of the city of Ithaca. I've lived here for about 20 years. I have a master's degree in landscape architecture and a background in real estate development, affordable housing, urban design, community design, things of that nature. And I've worked for the city. I was the sidewalk program manager, the previous sidewalk program manager, and now I work for Cornell for the student campus life as a manager of space and long range planning. And I'm really excited to be here. I'm really interested in pedestrian experience, particularly how private property meets public property. And so I'm very, very happy to be here.
Great. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, we have emergency exits at the front and the rear where everybody entered. In the case of an emergency evacuation, we're to take one of two exits that I mentioned and wait at the trees on the same side of the street on South Cayuga and Green Street. We do not cross Green Street unless absolutely necessary. Those with restricted mobility, in the event of emergencies, it is best to move to one of the stairwells and first responders will arrive to aid you. In the event of other emergencies, you'll be notified at that time. We want everyone to be aware of their surroundings and offer to help when it is not to your own detriment, as you're your own best advocate. Women's restrooms are located on the first and third floors and men's restrooms on the second and fourth floors. We have a medium busy agenda tonight, and we want to attend to all the items on that agenda in a thorough and deliberate manner. To that end, I would encourage our board members and members of the public to adhere to a short comment and discussion. Keep it as concise as possible. Nikki, are there any changes to our agenda tonight?
There are none.
Great. So moving into our first project, actually we do public comments. This is the time for the public to speak about any item for which there is not a public hearing tonight. We do have a public hearing for Creekside Plaza major subdivision. And we do have a public hearing for the Citizen at 602 West Buffalo Street. So those are our two official public hearings tonight. If there's anyone here who wishes to speak on something else other than the two that I mentioned, now would be the time. Anyone in the audience? Seeing none. Sam, anybody in the waiting room? Okay. Then we will move right on to, okay, minutes. We'll move right on to approving the October 28th minutes. So may I have a motion to talk about the minutes? Jenny moves and Elizabeth seconds. Any changes or discussion about those minutes? Seeing none. Okay, let's do a show of hands. All in favor of approval of minutes? That is unanimous. Thank you. Okay, now we'll move into project review. We'll start with this subdivision review, Creekside Plaza major subdivision and parcel reconfiguration. Do we have our applicant with us in the waiting room? Hi, Phoebe, are you there?
Hi, I'm here.
Hi, okay, I can hear you. Here we go. Okay.
Hello, good evening.
Here we go. Welcome. Would you like to give us a presentation?
I'd love to. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much for having us here. My name is Phoebe Parkin. I'm the senior paralegal for Chase Properties. We purchased Creekside Plaza a little over a year ago, and we've been doing some upgrades to the property, and we are requesting to do a major subdivision of the property. We currently have 4 parcels that we own. We'd like to slightly reconfigure and create some new parcels, so we would be going from 4 parcels to 6. The purpose of this is primarily to even up the parcels a little bit, to make it a little bit of an easier split between the buildings. This helps us down the road with tax parcels, with taxes going back to our tenants. And then also we've been looking at the potential for redeveloping what used to be the Tops gas station out front along South Meadow. And there you have it.
Great, okay. So before I dig into any questions or discussion, we have a few things to approve here. First, let's declare lead agent. That is this orange sheet. This is the declaration of lead agency. Can I have a motion to move? I see Elizabeth moves, Andy seconds. All in favor, let's do a roll call vote. Andy,
Yes.
Jenny,
Yes.
Max, Elizabeth, Peggy.
Yes.
I'm also a yes. So we are your lead agency.
Great.
Let's do the public hearing. Can I have a motion to open public hearing? Andy moves, Jenny seconds. All in favor of opening public hearing? Okay, and so do we have anybody wishing to speak, Sam, in the audience or online? We don't. Okay, motion to close public hearing. Andy moves, Jenny seconds. All in favor of closing public hearing? Public hearing is now closed. Okay, I'm going to hold on the seeker. So let's go around and ask any questions or make comments. Andy.
Yeah, thanks, Phoebe. I was at the PRC meeting. I think you answered all my questions then, so I don't have any questions. I think it's straightforward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jenny.
Andy, now I want to know what your questions were. I am also, in case those would be good questions to know.
Well, actually, my only question was a comment. It was to thank Phoebe for her clarity in her presentation. So.
I guess this also seems pretty straightforward to me. I'd be curious from Lisa and Nikki if there's anything that if there's any unknown unknowns or known unknowns that we don't know to ask about. It's sort of when we're thinking about this, particularly in like a commercial space.
So we had talked, was it at PRC? About the previous owner had promised to do some improvements to the intersection right next to the gas station, and some of it got done and some of it didn't get done. So we talked about having them do this as a condition of subdivision, but Phoebe then, there was a whole work plan. Phoebe then shared the information with me that most of the work has gotten done. They are going to move the signs back so that it'll increase pedestrian visibility. And there's really no other issues with this.
Sounds good. Nothing else from me. Thank you, Phoebe.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. Max?
I think this is all very straightforward. I think you've got all the approvals from the city that they're well documented in the materials that we had. And I think the rationale for doing this makes sense to me. I have no objections and no more questions.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
Thanks, everyone. I would agree with what's been said. The only advice I would give you is, although I've looked at the material, it's always nice to bring up a drawing to speak to when you're presenting to us. But I don't know if anyone else wants to see that, but I'm okay with what has been proposed thus far.
Thank you.
you.
Peggy?
I don't have any questions about this. Again, I agree with what everyone has said. It's very straightforward. I'm really happy to hear that the pedestrian improvements are going to be happening. And it seems like a reasonable, good. Oh, yeah.
Oh, there.
This earlier. It seems like a very rational approach to leasing and why you're doing it. It makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. I also have nothing to add. I think it Makes perfect sense. So it sounds like we are fairly convinced. Let's move forward with this seeker negative declaration, the green. Can I have a motion to open the discussion? Jenny, now we have more names. Jenny moves. I think I saw Elizabeth second. All in favor of, do we have to do that? Discussing it? Show of hands to discuss. Great. Any changes to this or questions about the neg deck? Okay, let's do a roll call vote. Andy,
Yes.
Jenny,
Yes.
Max, Elizabeth, and Peggy.
Yes.
And I am also a yes. So you have a negative declaration on the seeker. And I think we can move right into preliminary. We're just doing preliminary subdivision tonight, so we would do final.
Right,
Next
because
month
it's
because
a
of the
major
public hearing.
subdivision, and so it requires 2 meetings.
Okay. Who moves this preliminary subdivision? Jenny moves. Gonna have a second. Andy seconds. Okay, anything to discuss on this? Let's take a closer look at the whereas. Any questions or changes? Being nodding heads. Okay, let's do a roll call vote on preliminary subdivision approval. Andy,
Yes.
Jenny, Max,
Yes.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
Peggy.
Yes.
I am also a yes. Okay, so Phoebe, that's all the business we have for you tonight. I think we'll see you in December for the final.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a lovely holiday this week.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next project up is The Citizen at 602 West Buffalo Street. Tonight, we're going to be having a public hearing and discussing the amended negative declaration. In the virtual room. Okay, Julia and Todd, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep.
There you are.
Good
Hi.
evening. Hi.
Hello.
Can you hear me well? Oh,
Yes,
okay.
we
Now I
can.
think I'm good.
Are we expecting Bear as well? Okay.
Yes. Is he in the waiting room?
I'll keep an eye out for it.
So while we're waiting for him, we could have the amended neg deck discussion. Do we want to do that after hearing? Maybe we wait. I was trying to get through a few things, but let's wait until we hear the presentation. But we could do the public hearing.
I'm not sure. I'm gonna see. Well, he should be joining. I apologize.
That's okay. We'll give him a minute.
He's joining now. I guess he was just too quick.
Just because we're way out of schedule here.
Is he showing on the waiting room?
No, not yet.
Apologize. I'm not sure what's happening. I apologize. I'm gonna try to give him a call. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Julia, do you happen to have Eric? Because we could switch the order and do the breeze first and circle back.
Yes, well, is Eric by any chance in the waiting room? I can check with him if he's ready
Yeah.
there. If he's not in the waiting room, I can call him now.
Okay, we have Bear.
Oh, great. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Might want to give Eric a heads up. We're running ahead of schedule though.
Yes, will do. Thank you for that.
One second, I apologize for running a touch late.
No, we are early for once, so no worries.
Okay, just need to open up the file and we'll be all set to go. Alrighty, I think I'm all set. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right. So last time we had talked about wanting to do a more in-depth conversation about the project as a whole. And then we also had a few outstanding items from the last meeting that required just a little bit more conversation. So our goal is to try to go through all of those this evening. I'm going to jump ahead to the planting plan and kind of go through the site elements from there. So looking at the front corner of the property along North Meadow and West Buffalo, we do have we have a small section of plantings along the front of the retail section, along with one new tree. The other existing trees are intended to remain, along with the bollards along the front of the street. There is a couple of plants that are tucked right in underneath the drive here. To take a step back a little bit, what we have is right here on the corner of the two streets is a mix between the retail or commercial space, it could be a business, and also the residential portion. This has been limited in square footage and area as much as possible to try to help mitigate mitigate higher needs of floodproofing on the ground level. We have under-building parking along the back. And then back here, we do have a secondary emergency stair along with an elevated electrical room to make sure all utilities are elevated from a floodproofing purpose. The rectangles that you're seeing going along the bottom of the parking here, that's an underground cistern. And so that's taking all the rainwater from the roof and it's slowly going to put that into the stormwater system. But if there's a high volume, this will hold it momentarily and slowly put it back into the system so that the stormwater system doesn't get overwhelmed. There is also along the back a little seating area with some like chess tables and such for residents to be able to have a little outdoor space on site. Going to here's the other overall site plan. Additionally, there is a paver section along the back of the building. Again, this section is only meant for emergency vehicle access only. As there is an easement agreement with TC Action right next door. And this was to try to satisfy the New York State aerial fire truck apparatus code. The way the code reads is that you need to have access on one entire face of the building, and which we do have that access along here, but it is a pretty short face of the building. And Ithaca has traditionally interpreted as if you can provide the longest face, that is what's preferred and desired. And so to try to help make up for that, that's why there's the additional access in the back to allow the fire department to be able to gain access towards the roof on both ends. In terms of other site elements, there is the area back here. We are working on trying to get some fencing included in here for the, this area right here for the parking, for the bike storage area underneath. There is fencing that runs along the perimeter of the building. There's going to be a little bit of new fencing added along the front here. And keep in mind, again, there's those two plants that are about 4 to 5 foot tall when they get fully matured right in this area. We do have an existing fence of the neighbors running along here. Then the project will be adding in new fencing along here, all the way back and wrapping around. TC Action does have a wood fence that runs along their property all the way down and across here. And so we will have some additional fencing here and here to try to close off this section just for emergency access only, as this is a pretty narrow area between the buildings, and we want to try to keep that void of foot traffic as much as possible. One other element to really note in terms of the site plan, and this was something that was discussed at length when we originally got the approval a couple of years back, was that opening up this corner was a desirable element for people to be able to walk, cut the corner, and also have like a little respite here, have a covered area and have some seating that might be associated with the retail or business portion of the building. Moving along, let's go to the building elevations. So, for context, we'll start with the isometric view. This is an infill project, and as it is an infill project, that kind of drives the shape of the building and does limit how much you're able to do in terms of the floor plan on the interior. So again, we have Buffalo Street and also Meadow Street fronting these two corners of the building. And then it's going to step back in behind the buildings of TC Action, and also it steps along the property lines on the western face as well. We do have solar sunscreens that are going around the predominant faces of the building to help try to create some visual interest, and also effectively try to solar shade on the sides that are going to get the most interaction. So we see that on the east side, the south side, and when we get to the other face, you'll see it along the west side as well. Along the back of the building where it's tucked in between, we don't have the solar shades there because they won't be effective in terms of what they're attempting to do. In terms of visuals and context, this building we did have to raise because of the floodplain. And as a part of that, we raised it about 4 foot to be able to raise everything out for the flood purposes. But that was going to trigger a zoning variance if we kept the same number of stories. So to be able to ensure that we were still compliant with the ordinances, we had removed the top story. So this went from a 5-story building down to a 4-story building, which ultimately made the building shorter than it previously was. So while we do have 2 residential buildings along Buffalo Street, currently, I believe this one next to it is not currently occupied. I need to confirm that. I know that was the case during the previous mission, but we need to confirm again. And then along Meadow Street, this portion of the facade right here will be visible at the street front, and then the building steps back behind the TC Action buildings here and here. In terms of materials, we're using masonry on the ground floor because it's both durable from a floodproofing standpoint, and it's also a very resilient material in an urban environment. So this will be a split face CMU that is going to be of a gray color, not your standard like concrete gray, but a touch darker, verging on that charcoal. And then the materials up above is going to be an assortment of fiber cement siding. And of course, again, we have these vertical solar shades that will be of a perforated metal and will be either powder coated or epoxy painted green. In terms of, we'll go around all the elevations real quick. So on the back side of the building, again, we have the solar shades going up and along to create some visual interest along there. You can see the raised portion for the emergency egress on the secondary stair, and as well as the electrical room back there. And then you get some shorter facades along the back portion there as the building snakes through the lot. For the accessibility concern that was raised during the last meeting, the first place to really start to understand how the decision was made in terms of where we place the access and trying to limit the distances and give the best flexibility and the best equitability as we could, is to understand the layout of the upper floors. As this building is infill parcel, we want to try to provide as much exterior facade to the dwelling units as much as possible. So given the shape of the building on this front portion, it made the most sense to centralize this vertical circulation as much as we possibly can, as opposed to pushing it further inbound, which would have taken up a valuable dwelling unit space. But again, we also have to keep in mind that there is a parking element that's under the building, so it can't go too much further south either, because then it starts impacting that. So to try to address that, this is where the elevator and stair had landed based off of our elevation needs. And currently, what we have for, let's discuss retail first, and then we'll get into the residential. With the retail portion, you can dry flood proof, which means that you're allowing it to be below the required flood elevation, but you have to make sure it's like a bathtub, no water can infiltrate. You have to have protective measures to be able to achieve that. One of those requirements is you do have to have one means of egress that does elevate up out of the, or goes to the elevated height to be able to get out. So you can't have all of your means of egress tucked down. So previously, the space was split into two different retail sections. And if we did that, we would have to provide two elevated means of egress because each space would be independent. As a part of that, that was going to chew up a lot of square footage to be able to achieve that. So what ended up happening was we combined the spaces together, and we have the stair in here going to the front vestibule out. This is only meant for emergency purposes. The intent is for that these two doors along Meadow Street would be the primary entrances and exits for this space. Again, this would only be serving as emergency exit only. The stair along the front was something that, well, the entry point here was a remnant of the previous design. And as we elevated, we saw an opportunity to be able to provide the landing and the stairs right here. But given the location of where the stairs and elevators were, it became a concern of how much ramping was going to be required to elevate 4 feet for someone to be able to navigate around the building and get to the elevator as necessary. As we approach this, we were looking at the fact of most of the tenants are probably going to be parking in underneath the building, and we have our accessible parking here and here. And then we also have access to Buffalo Street over here. So placing this lower lobby with an elevator that has a front and back door that allows them to be able to get up through the building provides the quickest and the easiest means of access up. It is important to note that, like most mixed-use buildings, the ground floor tends to be commercial and the upper floors tend to be residential, and an elevator becomes a necessity to be able to access those upper floors, regardless of the floodplain or not. So as a part of that, while we do have the elevator, we wanted to make sure that we were able to get access to this raised portion here and up through the building. So this creates a nice progression for tenants to be able to come in, enter the elevator, and if they want to leave the first floor, they can just continue straight on through to the first floor. Or if they go up to the upper floors, they're able to continue right out into the building to wherever their unit is located. Additionally, looking at the access, we can see here going from the parking, we're approximately 72 feet. Going from the sidewalk to the elevator, we're about 62 feet. When we started exploring other options, such as a ramp in the front of the building, we're able to tuck a ramp in, but it does extend beyond the footprint of the building. And there's going to be a portion here that wouldn't be covered. And you're looking at 128 feet to be able to get from Meadow Street all the way in through the building to the elevator. While here, we're still able to maintain that 62 feet and then 72 feet. So while this is possible and could work, it is a much longer path to be able to enter the building and does require someone being able to wheel up a ramp as opposed to utilizing the elevator right at grade. Looking at other opportunities, and some of this we'll recognize that we looked at this early on and we're kind of showing this kind of how we came to this decision a little bit, because there were some challenges when we were looking at trying to move the entry here to make this work a little bit better. So in this instance, we're looking at trying to move the entry closer to the street. And if we were to try to achieve that and add a ramp, it works nicely from the parking lot. We're able to get about 150 foot straight up to this entry, come on in and into the elevator. But it would require a set of stairs on the other side, which then is pushing someone to have to navigate along the driveway, which isn't a safe condition. And there wasn't enough space to be able to push the elevator and stair further up into the building again. Remember that condition on the second floor. And so if we flip the situation, same kind of approach. We have the parking over here. Someone would have to navigate along the driveway to be able to get to the public right away, then to be able to go up the ramp. So at this situation, you're looking at the longest path to get into the building. So that is why we ultimately landed on this approach here, where the building access is left at grade and would require to be wet flood proof to be able to bring people in, get them to the elevator, and then go up. And then just as a quick catch up with some of the other items we talked about, we did update the rendering because previously there was concern about the height of the windows along the front here. We had forgotten to include the plantings along here, which would shorten the amount of seating a little bit and gives a little bit more variety along there. And also there was a comment about the blank wall space that was over here. And what we suggest doing is bringing the windowsills down to be uniform with the other windowsills along the facade, and either have a spandrel panel or clear glass. That's undetermined at this point because there is office space in behind, so some privacy will probably be desired at that height. And of course, we are keeping the mural that was previously in the prior approval. I think that covers everything I had on my list. Julia, is there anything I'm missing that we would like to cover?
No, I think you covered the notes that I had for now.
Okay.
Great. Thank you very much, Bear. That was a very thorough recap, I think. I appreciate that. I think before we go around for board member comments, I'd like to do the public hearing in case we hear anything from the public. Anybody in the audience? Well, first, sorry. Could I have a motion to open public hearing? Jenny moves. Andy seconds. All in favor of opening public hearing? The public hearing is now open. Anyone in the public wishing to speak? Seeing none. Sam, anyone online? Nobody. Okay. Can I have a motion to close public hearing? Elizabeth moves. Jenny seconds. All in favor of closing public hearing? Public hearing is now closed. Okay, now let's go around. I'm going to let you off the hook as number one this time. Jenny, can I start with you, please?
Sure. Thanks so much, Bear, for that thoughtful presentation. You know, I'm admittedly still a little bit uncomfortable with the accessibility component. I understand sort of the different pieces that you laid out and how you landed here. You know, I'm wondering if you guys would be able to reach out to Flick, the Finger Lakes Independence Center, and I don't know, I just would really like some outside perspective on what this looks like in practice for folks who really do need that, especially, and I'm curious, is this project funded by ESHI, like, you know, New York State Supportive Housing funding?
I'd have to double check. We have submitted for HCR funding. Excuse me. We've submitted for HCR funding through the 9% application. And there is, I think, 18 units that have been identified for supportive housing needs.
Okay, because I mean, I just think particularly you're building a building that is for individuals that may have accessibility challenges. And so I think it just really means that it's important to get the accessibility right. And that may be what you guys have laid out. I don't yet feel comfortable or, you know, confident that that is what you've laid out. I really think sort of just relying on elevator only access for a building, especially an elevator access that has public access from the outside in, can lead to other challenges. You know, I can appreciate that you can get in the elevator and go right up to your floor, but I also think that if it is opening up to what is like a publicly available area, that you open yourself up to having more issues and challenges with the space in that elevator and what that looks like for residents. And And I think having an elevator that is like a little bit more internal to the building can be safer, more secure, and provide a better experience for people who are living there. So I you know, I don't know, I'm still feeling a little bit stuck on this. I think it would be great if we could, you know, ask some experts to kind of take a look and see if they feel like, given the population that you're trying to serve with this building, if those individuals really would feel like that's an acceptable way to kind of come in and out of the space. That was one. I really liked the drainage elements that you talked about. I thought those, it seems like you've got some really interesting sustainability components of this building. And then the other thing is parking. I mean, I think if you look at all of our design guidelines pretty clearly, we ask for screened parking. And so I think just putting up a fence isn't really necessarily tasteful screening. This is like a huge intersection downtown that is like very well trafficked and very visible as you come into and exit Ithaca. And so I think creative screening for parking in this particular space is really important. All right, that was a mouthful, so I will pass to Max. Thank you, Bear.
Thanks, Jenny. Max?
Thanks, Bear. Thanks for that broad overview. It was really good. I want to continue along the lines that Jenny is talking about, and talk about the west side of the building or the back side that we're talking. It seems to be the kind of the big issue. I appreciated the options that you laid out in terms of accessibility, and I feel more comfortable about the option A, and I kind of see that, but I have some other questions about that side of the building that come to my mind if that were to be the option. And they have, basically, as you were talking, I was thinking we're calling it the backside of the building, but to the residents, it's almost kind of the front side of the building, right? Because it's the main point of entrance and so forth. And so one of the things that I'm interested in exploring is kind of the attractiveness of that entrance, the functionality of it. And then maybe the biggest issue for me right now in my mind, or biggest question, is the safety in that space back there. To me, this seems like it could be a dark, dank parking area in the back that would be really creepy to enter the building. And I wonder, if we could talk about that a little bit and maybe address that issue of primarily safety, but also attractiveness, and making it really a building that people want to come to and that they feel like it's really welcoming to them. When we talk about the accessibility there, I'm wondering about the corners and the entryway there, and whether there'd be a hiding space for someone, how visible it would be to the street. In this case, even though we want to screen parking normally, I'm more concerned about visibility in this area, because I mean, if I was living there, I would want to have people walking by and seeing it, and it is a busy urban space down there, and I wouldn't want spaces that were dark and kind of hidden there. So I think that's kind of roughly frames what I want to talk about with you and hear more about. I had one other thing that came to my mind that when I was thinking about this, and that's how busy Buffalo Street is, and then how people swing around from Meadow Street onto Buffalo Street, and they're often speeding around that corner. And it started to make me think a little bit about the egress from that parking area. And I would be interested to know a little bit about the visibility issues, especially for people that are exiting from there, and the extent to which that is safe, right, for both people that are exiting there, and then also people driving by on the street and maybe driving too fast. Yeah. So so I think that's enough. I'll pass on. Those are things that are on my mind.
Great. Thank you, Max. Elizabeth?
Thanks, Max and Jenny. Those are really good observations. Thank you, Bear, for your eloquent description of all the studies that you did. So I have the same the same concerns about safety and security in the back of the parking area. Lighting, I know it all has to be dark sky compliant, but it should be well lit. And I don't know that we got too much into that. I think that option one is probably the best option, but Jenny's correct. We should have some experts look at it. That is essentially the front entrance for residents. I wanted you to clarify what the functions of those spaces on that back part of the building are. Is it just for residents? And is the public just the at-grade area that's white and not hatched out?
That is correct. The hatched portion is the raised portion of the building, and that is for residents only, with the exception of this vestibule, which we would have to be thoughtful with our door hardware security to make sure that someone can't come up through this vestibule and enter this door right here.
So that back vestibule to the elevator, that's all secure and only accessible to residents and staff,
Correct.
right?
Yep, correct. Yep.
Good, that's good to know. The one question that no one's really talked about yet is, are the sunshades functional? Did you do a sun study? Because I didn't think that there was enough shading on the west side. And so I wanted to hear more about that. I don't know if you want to address that now or just at the end when and I
Understood.
think Peggy is going to want to know about the pedestrian experience. I'm also, so I won't touch on that, but I was worried about pedestrians crossing the area where the parking lot exit into the street, et cetera. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Peggy.
All right, yes, I am interested in the pedestrian experience. Could you bring up the plan for the parking plan again? Yeah. So this is a two-way entry exit. So cars will be waiting to get out now and coming in over the sidewalk. This is an extremely narrow sidewalk here.
Correct. This was the layout that we did during the previous approval that was approved by the DOT. And so essentially people, as they're coming westward on Buffalo Street, they would be able to enter the parking lot only from that direction. And then they would have to exit going westward as well. Entering from the left is something that while the curb cuts are shown there, it's not, I think we have to have some signage that was indicating that that's not allowed. Yep, right here, no left turns here. And then there is a little island here in the middle to help try to break the two different lanes to be able to give a little safety buffer as people are crossing.
It's very tricky. It's a very busy space. On a Friday night in the summer, this is somebody trying to get in or out of here they'll just be sitting on the sidewalk for 20 minutes until someone lets them out. That's an exaggeration, but so that's something I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about the security, I understand what's going on, why you've chosen to put the entrance in the back, but it feels extremely devalued. This is going to be affordable housing now. Are we hiding? It feels like you're hiding the people. The entry is in the back. It's underneath this enclosure somehow. And it just feels very, it doesn't feel like an entrance. Well, it's not legible to anyone coming to visit. That's a concern that I have. It also feels like it won't be very safe. So a high foot traffic area. It's a lot going on across the street at the gas station. A lot going on in this neighborhood. I lived in this neighborhood for a very long time. I know it very well. I don't know. This is my first meeting, so I'm kind of speaking a lot, and I apologize. But another question I have is, could you talk about the stairway on Buffalo Street? Is this where I apologize, but where does this go?
So this stairway leads up into the that shared vestibule that's predominantly meant for the residents, but also serves as the means of egress from the retail space. So we can see that here. So that previous view was looking this way. And so we're coming up the stairs into the vestibule and then into the building, which immediately you have your leasing office, your conference room, and then access to the stairs. Elevator is tucked right in behind.
And this is emergency egress for retail?
Yes, emergency only. The intent is that even in an emergency situation, these doors would be the primary doors that would be being used right at grade. They can serve as the emergency exits, but because of the floodplain issue, there is a specific requirement that you have to have one emergency exit that is elevated. And so to be able to achieve that in the most efficient way, we're doubling and using this vestibule for that purpose.
And this would be like an alarm crash bar kind of situation?
Exactly.
That feels, also does not feel very safe for the residents. That's, so those are kind of, those are the things I'm thinking about with this layout. And I know that this is a very difficult lot, and you've answered a lot of requests by pulling the facade back from the street and giving this corner back to pedestrians, and I appreciate that a lot. I don't know. I think I'm going to leave it at that, but that's I'd like to see maybe something. Is there, so there's another, I do have another question. There's a way for emergency vehicles to enter on Meadow. Is that right? There's going to be another curb cut on Meadow?
Yes. So pull up that plan again. So this portion right here is technically TC Action's parking lot.
Oh,
And so we have an easement agreement with them to extend access through for emergency vehicles.
I see. Okay. I don't have another question. I just wanted to see it again. And I'm just thinking about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. Questions that I have for you. When you talk about the 18 units of supportive housing, does that mean there will be support staff in-house? I think that would be really important to understand. I think on behalf of the city, I'm feeling burned by the Vecino project over the convention center and how that sort of deteriorated over time with a lack of supportive staff on site. And so I would love to hear what the strategy is for these 18 units and how you can avoid a situation like that here. I also noticed, thanks to Lisa, in your elevations of Buffalo Street, how close the house is to your building. So I wondered if you could talk to us a little bit about that. Give us a number. How are you meeting the code there? And you said you would circle back next time with whether that's an empty house or not, but I'm not sure that it matters because it is a house that someone will occupy at some point. So just to hear your strategy on how your building is sensitive to that. And then I just want to drive home. I feel the same way about this devalued sort of secondary entrance. And I think it was a great idea that you proposed, Jenny, to reaching out to the FLIC to just get somebody that's not us, somebody that's not from your team to sort of weigh in on what their thoughts are on your proposed accessible solutions. If it is what you're proposing, if that's where everybody lands, I will second that it's got to be the most well-lit, the most beautiful, and the safest so that it feels equitable. Okay, so any other, Andy, oh my gosh. Thank you, Nikki. Please give us your thoughts.
Okay, yes, thank you. Well, I think a lot of what I want to talk about, my fellow board members have already shared, but just to, take it a little bit further, from the urban design standpoint, I think the two issues are the safety of the garage and the experience of the garage. And to me, that really should be an enclosed garage screen somehow, some control at the entry and exit as well, so that people can't come in to this garage unless they're residents. Because I do think in this part of town, it looks like a sort of a sheltered place, a place that, you could just sort of hang out. And I think that would be a mistake. The other urban design issue that I'm seeing is the sidewalk experience beyond your property line. The existing trees along Meadow Street now are in these oversized tree boxes, which, create the opportunity for more landscape. There's a mix of concrete and paver, and I'm not seeing really any design in your presentation that really addresses that. I just see sort of 3 trees, but I think that would be a great opportunity to design that sidewalk beyond your property, including the bollards. If the bollards are there for safety, then I think here's an opportunity to make them part of the design. They shouldn't just be those yellow painted existing bollards. They could be light fixtures. They could be something really that adds something special to that corner. And then my other comment, as everyone else has talked about, is really the equity of the accessibility. If Bear, could you go to the plan that has the ramp coming from the corner? I have just a general, no, not that one. Maybe it's the last scheme. This one. I have a problem with, the front, access to this building being a stair. Because it's not just people in wheelchairs, it's people over a certain age. I think you have to think about move-ins. I think you have to think about equipment and furniture delivery. Having this big stair as the front door to me seems wrong. And I'm wondering, is there the opportunity of dry waterproofing a portion of this lobby so that you could actually come in, actually even grab that ramp? I think the ramp should be inside the building, not outside. So expand the building to incorporate those columns on the west side, come into a space that's at grade, that's dry waterproofed, and then have access to your ramp, access to the stair within the building. Again, I just think, I know there's these huge challenges, and I think you did a great job on the State Street project figuring it out. But here, I don't think this is the way we want to address buildings in our floodplain, is you need a stair. Because again, it's beyond, people that are in wheelchairs. It's people of a certain age and just sort of the function of the building. I really appreciate the work, you put into the plan. I see why the elevator is in that location. It totally makes sense. Your units, you're maximizing, windows for all of the units. I still think there could be some more verticality to the facade. I think it is so horizontal and it's so high up on these columns that I think, something more could break through that very linear expression. And I agree with Elizabeth that, the green elements really aren't, making an impact on your sun shading. I mean, if you really are wanting to do that on the south side, they would probably be horizontal, not vertical. So maybe some more thought into that. But, I absolutely applaud the team for developing this site. It's really going to be great when it's developed. So those are my comments.
Thank you. I apologize for skipping you too. Okay, so I think that was a great discussion. We've taken more time, but I think it was really worthwhile to hear the thorough presentation and then also everybody's feedback on it. I would like to address the idea of amending the neg deck. And so we're going to talk about it today, and if we decide to do it, it would happen next month. But from what I understand, we would open the seeker, sort of go through any of the areas that are impacted in the new design, keep what was written before, strike it out as a record, and then add new language to capture any changes that have been made. And so areas we would look at, we can look at all the areas, but specifically the project description, the impact on land, the flooding is a huge one, aesthetic impact, and also transportation. Did I get them all? Transportation, bike, and pedestrian?
Yes, and to be clear, we would be doing this for you and bringing that amended neg deck,
Mhm.
like, yeah, yep. And those are yes, exactly those.
So these are the areas that Nikki brainstormed are the most visibly changed. So tonight we should just talk about, do we want to amend the seeker or not? What are the implications of that for this project, but also future projects that might come to us and have a similar change in project? Would we open the seeker, and is this sort of a precedent? So
And I will
Yeah.
say, if I can, amended neg deck does give you a record. That's the biggest thing. Like, this is what's changed, this is what's on record of, 500 to 100 year and et cetera.
And we would do it concurrently with the project team's answers to questions today, sort of add it as an additional item next month. So I'm just curious to everybody's thoughts on whether this is wise or not wise, or what do you think? Max?
Can you just explain to me what the options are? I mean, one is to do this amended one. And the other option is what?
Just to leave the already approved neg deck.
Got it.
Yep.
And you say in the approval resolution that the previous negative declaration, is sufficient for the new project, but it doesn't capture any of the change.
That's very helpful. Thanks. I mean, can I just jump in?
Please.
Yeah, I think we should do an amended one. I think some of the stuff that's come up today, especially with respect to the transportation aspect, I think is, at least on my mind, it deserves a little bit more of a look and so forth. And I think it would be good, and I don't think it would hold things up too long for us to do this.
Mhm. Okay. Anybody else?
If I may, I would like to add that we have not changed anything in regards to the sidewalks and the parking from the previous approval.
Okay, that's great. I think that'll make it easier and shorter. I think we really want to look at impacts of the flood primarily, and the change in use with, well, I guess it's not use, but it's reducing that story in relation to the flood. Yeah,
I was
Elizabeth?
going to agree with you that there's probably a change in number of units and the floodplain issue, you need to document that there's a difference. And whatever other changes might be, this is a new board, we're going to redo the site plan approval. And so what other changes that we do should be correctly described in the seeker. We're not saying that it'll become a pos deck or anything like that. It's just to correct the record so that we have, a defensible document for this project. And yeah, so like I said, I'd be in support of that. I think it's good practice for us to go back and correct the record.
Okay. Anyone else? Sure, Andy.
Agree with what Elizabeth just said.
Okay. So I have 3 positive yeses and some shaking heads. So I think I agree. I think it's just good to have a clear record. And if we go back to look at this project, it's spelled out very clearly. And I can see this happening in the future. So we should create a good precedent for that. So I'm not sure if that happens in December or January. You think we would start to look at it?
Yes, we
Okay.
could definitely bring it sorry, there will be no PRC in December. We'll make sure everyone knows that too, because it's just too truncated. Materials would have to be due for planning board before PRC, but yes, we can have the amended neg deck as far as we've taken it, Xing it with all the materials, and then you guys could look at it and either vote on it or give it another month. And it's interesting when you do read it, the board, because I know it's, there's a lot of new members, similar issues. And then you can see how it was answered. Like, for example, that entrance, the ingress, egress and accessibility of the parking garage was asked and then answered by NY dot city engineering. So yeah, it's great to see that you guys have similar questions too.
Okay. I think that does it for tonight. Thank you to the team. Thank you, Bear, for walking us through all that. I think there's a lot to consider and hopefully bring back to us, and we will see you in December.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think we'll
we're-
we'll keep Julia and Todd, right? Okay.
Yes, thank you. And I know Eric is already there.
We ended up fairly on time, as projected. So the next project will be Breeze Apartments at 121 to 125 Lake Street. And we are looking at potential site plan changes approval tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Emily. We should have Michael as well for Abella. Is he on? Yes, I see him there. So thank you everyone for having us tonight here with the 121, 125 Lake Street project. We're here to review our recent modification requests. Aside from myself, just for Peggy, nice to meet you. For your knowledge, I'm VISM Senior Development Manager, and together with me I have Todd Fox, he's VISM CEO. And we also have Eric Reynolds, he's an architect with SWBR who will be making the presentation. And we have lastly Michael, but not at least, Michael Farabella with DGA Builders, who's going to be adding to one of our requests. So I'll pass it on to Eric so he can make the presentation now.
Thank you, Julia. Good evening. So to take things back a little bit, we are here tonight seeking some updates to a previously approved site plan. The Breeze Apartments was approved initially a number of years ago. At that time, along the eastern portion of the project was a steep bank. We were planning at that time to expose a section of bedrock, which has become a wall, which is the first thing we'll talk about tonight, and what was largely discussed at the last planning board meeting in October. And there's a couple of other ancillary pieces, so we'll go over those three things tonight. A change in updates to the retaining wall, as well as some dominoes that fell related to transformer location, landscaping, and the dumpster enclosure and landscaping. So the initially approved project, as I mentioned, was originally an exposed section of vertical bedrock. After the brownfield cleanup program was completed, there were sections at the far north and far south end, which were more soil than bedrock. So we came in March of this year seeking an initial approval to the site plan to change out the original proposed design from that exposed bedrock face to small sections of, well, small relative perhaps being the term there, but 2 sections of concrete retaining wall. And at that time, admittedly, sort of we came to the planning board. We were in the middle of construction. We were very much in a problem-solving mode at that point, and we were perhaps not doing as much due diligence as we would have had we been in a normal design process and a normal entitlement process. So in our last planning board meeting, we proposed the design that we were looking at, the alternative design. And these slides should look familiar because the presentation is largely the same. So we had proposed some updates, and we had referenced that the large change that we discussed was that in place of a concrete retaining wall, we were looking at a segmented block retaining wall. The board took some exception to that initially. There was some questions about why we needed to change from concrete to segmented block. And at that time, we had listed construction intensity in the meeting, and we had, I think, maybe put that in a letter. And we had not really given a lot of background in the previous planning board meeting in October to, what that really meant. So in the PRC recently, with a few of the planning boards, we really went into a little bit more detail, and that's kind of what we'll outline today for the most part, and certainly look at some of the other pieces, but that's kind of the meat of what we'll discuss today. So a concrete retaining wall requires folks to get on both sides. Formwork's required. Generally, what the domino is, additional excavation is required. So with a concrete retaining wall, your normal excavation limit is X. With other types of retaining walls, you only need to get to one side. Therefore, your excavation limit is a little bit less. That would not be an issue, perhaps on some sites. On our site here, because we are up against some property lines, the limit of excavation required for a concrete wall just expands further and closer into the neighbor's property. Again, on some projects that might not be necessarily the end of the world, but what we're dealing with here is potentially soil issues on the neighbor's property, as well as just a neighbor who is going through some things, is not keen on us doing additional excavation. So the cast in place concrete retaining wall requires more excavation. We are kind of at the limits of our excavation for two reasons. One, just being up against the neighbor's property. The second being that the soil on the neighbor's property was not cleaned to DEC standards during our project. And so therefore it would open up sort of DEC review and Environmental Protection Agency review. So some other things that we certainly don't want to get into. So our updated proposal is a segmented block retaining wall, reason being construction intensity. And hopefully that gives you a little bit of a background of what the construction intensity is. It's just a segmented block retaining wall can allow for workers to only have to be on one side and therefore less excavation. We did do some additional due diligence, and we did talk with Mike Farabella and if there was any, and his subcontractors, to see if there was any way that we could still use a cast in place concrete retaining wall. Physically, there perhaps is room, but there's a real safety issue with doing that. I know that we had offered to give folks the ability to go to the site and kind of see the conditions that were there. We've really performed the excavation to the limit that we can at this point from a safety perspective. Mike, I know you had provided some additional information before, just in the interest to keep rolling here. We can circle back and you can provide any more feedback, but there really is sort of OSHA issues without doing any more additional excavation. We cannot really put employees between, or I'm sorry, we cannot put workers between the vertical rock face and the back side of the wall as it stands. And we really cannot perform any additional excavation because of the neighboring property and DEC and the issues with the soil over there. So we talked about that in PRC, and I think generally that gave a better picture of what was going on to the members who were there. Like I said, the rest of this presentation is pretty similar. We did get some additional aesthetic options for the retaining wall and did look at some other photos. So on the left here is the cast in place formwork, workers on both sides, construction of the originally approved retaining wall. And then on the right is more like what we are proposing. So this is actually a pretty similar condition to where we have a retaining wall sort of butting up against existing bedrock cut. So this is very similar to the condition that we would have. And then we do have some alternative blocks. These are very large. Unfortunately, we can't bring them. They are available on site for anyone to go take a look at. But we do have some other alternatives from an aesthetic perspective. But our position really is that from a construction and logistics standpoint, being able to set these from one side up against the vertical bedrock cut is the only safe way that we can achieve this. So we're hopeful that with going through some of these options, the board can take a look and sort of understand the position that we're in. And that was the main crux of, I think, what we landed on last meeting. Just to like quickly recap, the other two things that we are seeking changes on are the location of the dumpster. So this upper plan here shows there's a dumpster enclosure here. For the same reasons of additional excavation and wall height and construction intensity, we are proposing to move this to the end. All of the previous requirements from a loading on the zoning side, as well as emergency vehicle turnaround, are preserved. This is a cedar dumpster enclosure with plantings around it. And then the other piece is a relocation of the transformer in our coordination with NYSEG and the city of Ithaca and what is allowed to come off of the right-of-way. We have relocated the transformer and associated plantings down into this corner, previously located up in this corner. Just to round things out, this is the plantings. This is the construction of the dumpster enclosure. So it's a cedar enclosure, arborvitaes around that, as well as the tall grasses and arborvitaes around the transformer. And then these last two attachments are just the formal drawings documenting everything that I just discussed. So with that, I will turn it over to the board. If there's any questions, we're happy to answer and talk through.
Great. Thank you, Eric. I'm going to start with you, Andy, so I don't miss you again, please.
Thank you. And thanks, Eric, for the presentation. And I did go to the site and looked at the options for for the blocks to build the wall. But then when we received our board packet, there was a comment from the city related to the width of the street and the new sidewalk that you're doing on the east side. Basically, you're proposing, if I understand the comment right, to reduce the width of the road 3 feet to accommodate that sidewalk, and the city is concerned with that from a safety standpoint. So the question that I had looking on site was, how does, if you pull up the elevation of the wall, how does that new wall, as it tapers down, interact with the existing wall? And I think what the city was proposing was potentially moving or rebuilding that wall. It's kind of really out of shape.
Yeah. Yep. The wall that is related to what you're talking about is a little bit further to the south, which is up here, I believe. My understanding in the conversations with what's going on with city engineering right now, then just to provide a little bit more feedback, we are in the process of pulling the building permit for this work, and the city had some questions. When we came in 2022 to seek the initial approval for this project, the planning board asked, would it be possible to extend the sidewalk and connect it all the way around? At that point, we had reached out to engineering, and we have some correspondence with Tim Loeb that this approach is approved, and that was part of our initial site plan approval. We are now just getting some questions asked through them now that we are pulling the permit to actually perform the work. So that's the background for that. We're not really here to talk about that tonight, of course. I'm more than happy to talk through it, Andy. The retaining wall that is related to the sidewalk extension is an existing one off property right in here. That one is in rough shape. Our retaining wall is on our site further back. So I think the existence of this new retaining wall tapering down should not really impact what does or does not happen with the sidewalk in the right of way. It should be far enough away from what we're those two things should be far enough apart. The retaining walls that are in question as part of the right of way sidewalk work, my understanding is this one here, which is
but the one just to the right of your new one, it looks like it's coming into the area that would be impacted.
This section here.
Yeah, the end of it. I mean,
Sure.
wouldn't you would have to do something there if you weren't able to widen the street?
I think I don't think we would, if we don't widen the street, I don't think this would have any domino. So like, we're not messing with the grading or anything in this area. We're just paving the sidewalk at grade. So this wall right now comes down to wherever it does, and we would pour sidewalk up against it in whatever manner the city engineering standards would be for something like that.
Yeah, it would have been helpful, I think, to provide a more illustrative exhibit to show what this retaining wall is really going to look like. Because again, I'm not understanding how it's tapering down at the end and how the existing wall comes in sort of behind it. So I feel like there's some information missing. I had also asked to, update the elevation to show the capstones. I mean, I can comment on the, which block I like better, but to me, I still feel like there's a little information missing. In terms of the landscape at the transformer, thank you for that. I think that's really clear how you're going to be screening the transformer and the screening at the arborvitae at the trash enclosure makes sense. So I guess I still have questions about the wall.
Thank you, Andy. Jenny.
Yeah, thanks for the additional screener around the dumpster. I think that looks really nice. I'm okay with the brick. I understand the predicament that you're in and your inability to do the poured concrete. If there's other folks who are also interested in sort of more detail on sort of how those pieces come together, I don't know if there's more materiality choices to help, mitigate whatever that juncture is that will be funky. But I agree, we can move away from the poured concrete, I think.
Thank you. Max?
Yeah, thanks very much. Eric, I think that, what Jenny just said about moving away from the poured concrete is not a problem. I think the those blocks that you want to put in there make a lot of sense given the circumstances. Like Andy, I went up and looked at those. And like Andy, I came away with the same question about that existing concrete wall and kind of how that all fit together there. So I kind of agree. I'd like to know a little bit more about how that's going to work out on that one corner. Otherwise, everything else that you're proposing seems well thought out and reasonable to me, but I really would like us to know a little bit more about just that little corner because it really is, it's kind of striking when you go and look at the blocks up there. Thanks.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
Thanks for your presentation, Eric. Appreciate you telling us what's going on there. I'm wondering though, how are you going to stabilize the soils and drain it and reinforce it without further going into the neighbor's soil that is not remediated? I feel like both the concrete wall and the block wall would require some sort of stabilization, geotextile, geogrid, and you would end up in the neighbor's soils anyway. So I'm not sure how that's going to help you. Have you thought about the structural stabilization of that block? And I agree with everyone. I did go and see the material on site. I prefer the smaller block because I feel like the large block looks like highway construction, but it would be good to see an elevation and also a section through this area to understand how, like I said, how you're stabilizing the soils behind it, how you're draining it, how you're maintaining soil and erosion controls. And so, yep, that's all I have.
Thank you. Peggy?
Hi, Eric. Excuse me. Thank you for your presentation. Again, the wall is, your choices are limited, and I completely understand why you can't use a material that you'd have to go into someone else's property. It would be an extraordinary burden on you. And so I don't love the block, but I understand why it's the choice. And so I get it. And I would love to see a section. I always want to see a section, and I'd love to see that through that wall and how it's going to work. I had a question about the planting plan, more about there's a red maple in the front yard, in the front lawn area, and I don't really understand what's going on. Why is that there? Like, how is that going? What will that look like? In all of the renderings, there's no, there isn't a tree there. I don't understand exactly why there's just the one tree. What's the idea behind it, I guess? Right there, yeah.
Yeah, I can jump in. Don't know the answer to that. Would have to go back and look and talk through sort of what it was. And my landscape architecture team's not here. They do a lot of work in Ithaca, full confidence in their decision making, but it was in 2022 probably that was initially discussed and located there. So don't remember exactly what it is, but
Sorry, Peggy, are you?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I wondered if we could maybe ask Michael, since you have him here, or Eric, if you know, sort of, can you give any detail to drainage and the structural stabilization to that block wall? I think it sounds like that would be helpful.
I can, yeah. And apologies for not including a section. We absolutely should have done that, which would have shed some light on this. It is a gravity wall system, so the lowest block is very large. Like the lowest level blocks are extremely wide. So this red actually represent, the blue is the wall height that you kind of will perceive, or I'm sorry, the wall thickness that you will perceive. The red is like the lowest level blocks, which are like 4 or 5 feet deep. And because this is just the type of wall that it is, there's enough weight in the wall and the way that the blocks interlock with each other. This type of wall does not require a geogrid or something that would tie back into the soil. It is just its own weight that and its interlocking and the engineering behind it that retains the soil. And then from a drainage perspective, again, we have, the wall is going to go in front of the bedrock cut that you would have all seen out there today. Behind the last wall are perforated pipes that would take any water that builds up behind the wall and direct it to the storm that's already on the site. So from a drainage perspective, the water would run down in a crusher run of rock that's behind the wall into a perforated pipe that then gets diverted to the storm system, which really on our site here, the storm goes into a rain garden up against the building and then slowly disperses into the system. So I think that answers those two questions. Was just to make sure I answered them, Emily. There was drainage and structural. Was that the two?
Yes, that's good. That sounds good to me. Any follow-up questions from those concerned?
No, that sounds good to me. I'd like to see a suction still.
Mhm. And Andy?
I guess I don't understand, Eric, behind the wall again, as it's turning the corner at the driveway and tapering down, what's behind it? Do you backfill
We
between the
do.
wall with what?
It's stone that's drainable, like drainage stone, up until the last, Mike help me out here, 6 inches, and then the top is like just soil that we would be able to put like meadow seed mix on. There would be a capstone, so it's kind of behind that, but we backfill basically with stone so that water can drain down and get into the perforated pipe, and just the very top couple
So,
inches would
so is
be
it kind of a 2-foot pathway of meadow that kind of follows the wall, like you could walk up it between your new wall and the existing gorge wall?
I don't know that you could walk there, but I guess you could walk on top of the wall, but the soil is coming down up the hill. It's not flat on the other side of our wall, so there's a big hill that is there that's currently stabilized with a bunch of vegetation.
Interestingly, we just did my own backyard project at my house, which is on a hill, and we had a backyard sized version of what you're describing in my own backyard. And so it would be curious to see if there is an option for plantings up there. And you mentioned sort of meadow grasses, that would be great. I don't know if there's other ground cover that would be really interesting, but that could also help kind of soften that intersection. If it is some sort of like a ground cover that could, I don't know, an ivy or something of that nature.
Yeah, it's something designed to be low maintenance that we don't have to get up and maintain, right? Because it's a little bit awkward. So it would be similar to what's on the hill today, kind of. I mean, there wouldn't be trees necessarily, but it would just blend in with that. So it would be tall grasses and meadow seed mix that doesn't need to be mowed or maintained.
Okay, thank you. I have a question for Nikki and Lisa, a couple questions. Since we're talking about sort of the engineering details of this wall change, would those details be submitted and then need to be approved by engineering, city engineering? Could we make that a condition of approval?
So they usually have their own engineers, and because it's private land, and that's who's, stamping it, stamp drawings that we then.
Okay, so it wouldn't be approved by city engineering, but we could request, Eric, sort of that final section engineered, sort of the drainage and the stability as a condition of the approval.
Yep.
We could request that to be submitted to staff.
And I know that we're not supposed to do this, but I do have it, and I can pull it up right now and just give a flavor, and this would need to be submitted formally, and I completely agree. But if Andy or anybody would like to see it, I do have it, and I can pull it up if we wanted to talk through it. But that was
okay.
obviously not part of our initial submission, so I understand that.
Probably not necessary to pull it up unless you disagree, but I think submitting it to Lisa and Nikki would be great. That was just one question. What was my other question? Oh, the sidewalk and the engineering comments that we got. That feels like a completely new issue that was spurred on by engineering. I kind of feel comfortable that what was approved was the 3-foot sidewalk. And if that's not possible between the applicant and city engineers, it would come back to us again, right? So if I may suggest, maybe we can talk about this resolution and sort of punt on the sidewalk because it will come back if it is not doable. Though I'm open to if anyone's uncomfortable with that. Okay. I heard a lot of still questions outstanding. Do we want to go around one more time before we decide if we're going to move this forward tonight or wait? Elizabeth.
Did you want to discuss any of the like aesthetic changes that it looks like they either removed a parapet or the building is lower than the original renderings, and there's a couple other changes that I noticed. I don't know if you want to discuss that now before we approve the changes, because those.
That's a good point. So you invited us to the site and we noticed some changes. So I wanted to offer the opportunity for Eric and for Vism to sort of tell us what those changes are, or if you want to, are there any more changes that you want to sort of submit to staff? It's better to know about them so we have the conversation rather than waiting for sort of a visit to check for it. So I'll just leave that out there. Maybe you can think about it. I'll come back to it and let's talk about the proposed changes in front of us. Andy.
Yeah, I think, thank you for that, Emily. And I feel comfortable if we're saying we're going to, split off the roadway issue. I think Eric described my question. Now I understand that design. It makes sense. So I'll go back to the block that I like the best, which was option number 2, which had a combination of a big scale stone and a smaller scale. And what I had asked the contractors on site was, is this one unit that's repeated? Is there any way to get some randomness to this? Is it basically just one mold, or does this alternate come with other mixes of those 3 stones within the block?
I don't know the answer to that. We could definitely find out, Mike. I'm not sure if you have the answer to that, if you're still there.
Yeah, I don't have the answer to that, Eric. I believe it's one mold, but I'd have to verify. But when they install it, it would be kind of a random pattern. So even though it's one mold, you would have some different stacking.
Kind of staggered. I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, they're staggered. I see. Right.
So maybe we could focus on this one. While you have the slide up, Eric, we can focus on this option and kind of go around and give our preference. Andy, I think you said alternative 2 is your preference.
Yeah, I like the coloration, the warmth of the concrete does actually relate nicely to the existing wall. That's kind of in bad shape, but it is sort of that color. And the building has, a warmth to it. So I liked that option.
Okay, Jenny?
I don't have a strong preference on this one, so I'll kind of defer to the rest of the board.
Okay, Max?
Yeah, I like either of the alternatives much better than the original.
Okay, Elizabeth?
I said, Max, as I mentioned before, I prefer the smaller scale one because I feel like the large one without the different sizing looks like highway construction.
Okay, and Peggy?
Yes, I prefer alternative 1. It just seems more, but it's just what I prefer.
Okay. And I prefer number 2. So I have a straw poll of 3 of us for number 2 and 1 of us for number 1 and the others deferring. So that sounds like we would recommend alternative 2. Okay, I'm seeing nods. Let me just write that down. So I think I think we're getting to a consensus. I'd like to move that we open the project changes. It's kind of discuss some language within it. Can I have a motion to open? Jenny moves and Andy seconds. Okay, so now we can discuss project changes. I think if we're talking about language, that first whereas changing the materiality of the eastern retaining wall from cast in place to a segmented block wall, we should add with a cap.
Well, with a cap?
With a cap.
Mhm.
And that the applicant will follow up with the the engineering for drainage and structure to staff. Do you have that below?
I think that might be, to correct me if I'm wrong, but wouldn't that be better as a condition
Sure, okay.
based on the following condition?
Okay.
Submittal of,
Engineered drawings for drainage and structure of that block wall.
perfect.
I heard also a condition that we would request ground cover at that top of that retaining wall where the fill is to be approved by staff? Or just ground cover in general?
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally fine with the meadow mix if that's.
Meadow
fine,
mix?
but
Okay.
Yeah.
So then let's say a condition would be fill behind the block wall to be planted with meadow mix.
Or, yeah, yep, that sounds great.
And do we need to add the plantings at the dumpster enclosure and the transformer? Did I just not see it? We talked about relocating the transformer.
We could put it on there, it doesn't matter.
We could put it, okay,
Yeah.
because it's in the
It's gonna
drawing.
be in the drawings, yeah, up
Fine,
to you.
okay.
Yeah.
If it's in the drawing, it's captured. Okay, so those are my changes. Does anybody else have additional changes or want to change my changes? Okay.
Have another discussion and another resolution for the other aesthetic changes that were made to the building? Or do we not?
Well, they haven't been,
They didn't come officially to us, yeah.
so I don't know, what do you recommend? I would think we would close this out and then open new project changes if they come forward. Okay, if others are proposed.
But they should come back to you with what other changes that they've
Okay.
made, if there are.
Okay, then I think we need to vote on that language of change before we vote on the full proposal. So let's just do a roll call vote if everyone agrees with that change of language. Andy,
Yes.
Jenny,
Yes.
Max,
Yes.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
Peggy.
Yes.
Okay, I also vote yes. And so now, last chance, anything else we want to do, or we move it to vote? Kind of seeing nothing. Okay. So then we'll do a roll call vote to approve changes as we just read them. Andy,
Yes.
Jenny,
Yes.
Max,
Yes.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
Peggy.
Yes.
I am also a yes. Okay. So back to Eric and the team. You've got your project changes as you've presented and as were described tonight. But I would encourage you, if there are other changes, let's do this again. Bring them forward, railings, parapet, changes in color, anything like that that are substantial. You can run them by staff to see if the staff feels they're substantial enough to bring it to the board. It might just be a staff level approval. But I would encourage that you kind of make a list and then bring it to Nikki and Lisa. So, okay. That's all for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Todd, Julia,
so
Mike,
much.
and Eric. I suspect we'll see you again, but maybe not. Thank you.
At the very least, the sidewalks.
That's true. Great.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, we're going to look at a report from the director next. No report. Okay, Nikki, we're going to talk about retreats.
Talk about, I know I reached out via email about the retreat for 2026, looking at signs. Be very exciting, I promise. And everyone had said, except for Elizabeth, so I wanted to circle back, and I don't know if I heard from Peggy, so just circle back here. We either had said Thursday, January 29th, which I think does not work, or Thursday, February 5th. So I just wanted to see which one was better.
Well, I think I said that Thursdays are not great for me, but if that's what it has to be, then yeah.
Okay, for either of those dates, or is there? a
On the
preferred-
29th, definitely not.
Okay,
Yeah.
That was, sorry, January 29th.
yes,
And what was the other one?
February 5th.
Okay, both fine for me.
Everybody else? I think, okay. So it's consensus February 5th. Is that okay, Elizabeth? February 5th, if we,
I'll make every attempt to attend.
Thank you. Okay. 6 to 8, February 5th.
Great.
2026. Absolutely. Because we'll have to have a place, all that. Yes.
Lisa, yeah.
Yeah, can I say one thing? So I just wanted to say that, Max, Elizabeth, Nikki, and I, and another planning staff member attended a developers summit last week in Binghamton. The intention was to bring together developers and people who work in the regulatory space and people who work in funding. It wasn't quite that kind of a balanced mix, but there were some very interesting presentations. I don't know if you have anything you'd like to share with the group about what we heard.
Yeah, I thought it was really good and worthwhile to go over there. Really, really interesting. It put in context a lot of the things that we might be thinking about here. Just a couple of things to mention that others would be interested in was that one of the featured projects was the Southworks project. And that was in conjunction with the refurbishment and redevelopment of old industrial sites and brownfields and the opportunities associated with all of that. And so that was really informative and I thought was really helpful. And then they talked about some other, large projects kind of in the region, but what caught my attention most was the interesting challenges faced to developing housing and the fact that there's support available from the state for affordable housing. And so there's quite a bit of affordable housing being developed. The high-end things don't seem to be a problem because there's people with lots of money, so that doesn't really make a difference. But what really makes a difference is for working class people kind of in the middle. And in fact, one gentleman came and made a very eloquent point about kind of the dignity of home ownership for working class people and how that's, being less and less available to people. And so that was something that was really striking to me. It seems that there's no clear solution to that. It's really an economic problem, a fundamental economic problem, and one that we face here in Ithaca, I think. And I think that people all through the region do. And then, so while I have the floor, sorry, I'm so verbose tonight. Then the last thing that was talked about were the kind of micro developments. And it was really cool because he was actually the featured speaker and talking how you redevelop kind of abandoned business and retail sites and so forth that were other uses, like a shopping mall or something, or, gas stations and so forth, and turn them into kind of really interesting urban spaces for residents and for business. And so the kind of places that he was talking about were like our Press Bay Alley. And so it was kind of cool because it's like, oh, wow, we should be the poster children up there. I mean, we could have been as well. But that's a movement that's going on kind of around the country. And I thought that was really interesting, right? And, it's happening here and we're doing it as well. So anyhow, those were a few things that came to my mind.
That was very well summarized, Max, and I wouldn't expect any less from you. It was really interesting. There was a lot to consume, and I'm really glad that we got the opportunity to participate. I wish that we were able to do more of those, and I really enjoyed the panel discussions. And even days after that, I still was like, oh, and that was great, and this was wonderful, and that applies to Ithaca as well. And so, yeah, I think Max really touched upon the highlights, and I hope that other board members are able to join us on these kinds of chats. I think it's a good opportunity for everyone to learn more about, trends in development, urban design, and how relevant Ithaca is in the national kind of trends. And there was a lot of people there from Ithaca, and I was really glad to see Southworks. And I'm hoping that Southworks invites us to go take a look soon as a board.
Great.
Yep.
Andy?
Can I ask a question? I hear a lot of discussion about sort of the missing middle, and I'd love to have a discussion about where affordable housing and the missing middle come together, because my experience in, just knowing people in Ithaca is, when we talk about affordable housing, there's so much to it. I mean, it can be from, a very low percentage of average monthly income to a very high percentage. And the higher percentage is kind of in line with sort of a typical job in Ithaca. So that's why I sometimes don't understand the missing middle, because to me that seems like it's really affordable housing. There's, even to get in on that level is very difficult. So I'm worried that people think, missing middle is, to me, the missing middle, if it's a step up from affordable, is high end. So I'd love to, hear more about what that really means.
Yeah, I think missing middle also refers to the size. So for like developments for us, there have not been a lot, as we spoke with the SPR amendments, between 2-family house and 60 units. Like so it really is like the triplex and the 4 and the middle apartments as well, which then could size and also, I think, for sure, income and affordability.
That's a good point, size.
Condo ownership, townhouses,
That's exactly.
courtyards, cottage courtyards, like it's that diversity, I think, too. Thinking of diversity of size and
So that was one of the things that they mentioned, right? Was the idea of co-ownership and what do we call it? We have a lot of these here in Ithaca, which is
co-housing.
co-housing. And that would fill the middle, but I still feel like there's not enough of it, right? And we see that as we do our approvals and reviews, that there's these really large developments and then smaller, very small scale ones. But we don't see that middle. And I think especially, I don't know if it's just Ithaca or all of New York State, that there is a housing crisis. And the affordable housing is not accessible to the middle, and neither is the high-end housing. And how do people do small developments and make it worth it, and address that middle? So it was really interesting.
Can I say that having worked in affordable housing development, the way that it's financed, it's impossible to finance middle income housing. There is something called middle income housing financing, but it doesn't really work. And that one of the things with the middle income families is that they can find something on the open market and not have to go through what you have to go through every year, which is certifying your income and saying, this is how much I make. This is my family. This is who lives with me. It's very invasive, and it doesn't appeal to a lot of people. And I think that's a lot of the people who in our community who might want to live in or be qualified to live in it would rather not have to go through that. And so there's something that we can't hit because of the way LIHTC works and the way that you have to prove that. If you don't prove it, then you have to pay the full rent. And so then like it's very, very, you can stay, but you have to pay full market rent, and it's very frustrating for people. That's my experience.
I was going to say there were a lot of folks from executive leadership in the state, and it might be something at that level that needs to change, which is new regulation and new approvals to that effect. So.
Great conversation. I think that's all we have for tonight, right? Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Elizabeth moves. Andy seconds. All in favor?